hello, assalamu alaikum, Giano, Pakheragale, Niha, Chunishume, Washmale. Oh, hi, Gazaimis, Guten Morgen, hi, hugs and hellos, and a very good and a very fresh Khosh Ahmadeed to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and watching World this morning, alongside the very pretty Maha Makhdoom and the very amazing Shazad Khan. Hello, Maha, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, Shazad. I'm good today. I'm rested. My earring keeps falling off my ear. It's fine. But I am raring to go with this week.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm
what
ready.
did you think over the weekend which made you think like that you were almost ready to go for the week as
I'm
well?
not even exaggerating. It's actually all of this, all of the studying of the different surahs that we're doing. And even last year, and I said this last year, it just, I don't know, it just seems to tie in with the things that are going on in my life. So I've been trying to apply those things.
Exactly,
So
and
let's see.
and at the same time, the feedback has been very impressive as well. And
Yeah.
the other thing which I would love to mention over here is that on Friday, I even ended up in an argument with somebody else, and he was trying to convey a message to me, and I was trying to convey a message to him as well. And then I said, okay, you know what we need to do is that we just need to sit down on Friday at night and watch the repeat of the World this morning, and you will get your answers.
Okay, great. So everything's great. The weekend was great. So I think we have a great week for you as well. And the show today is extremely interesting. We are observing a special day today. So let's take a look at the top headlines, and you'll get a rough idea what the show will be about.
Exactly.
National Assembly will resume its session today in the Parliament House in Islamabad at 4 p.m. Finance Minister will wind up the general discussion on the budget for the next fiscal year.
Moving on, where Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif will present himself before joint investigation team on Thursday.
Okay, Pakistan will. Okay, so moving on to sports, Pakistan will face Sri Lanka today in the virtual quarterfinal of the ICC Champions Trophy at Cardiff, and the winner will qualify for the semi-finals. And PTV will be telecasting the match live from 2:30 p.m. today.
Amazing that is. Moving on with sports, ladies and gentlemen, where Pakistani professional boxer and two-time silver flyweight world champion Mohammad Wasim becomes world number one in WBO flyweight category. Congratulations to Mohammad Wasim as well.
Excellent. Pakistani sportsmen making their name. And now for today, it is International Day Against Child Labour, and it is being observed to focus attention on the extent of the global child labour efforts that are needed to eliminate it.
All right, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to move on towards our public service message. So let's take a listen at what we have decided to be the public service message for today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so since it's Child Labor Day, so we definitely want things to be in line with that as well, because we are dedicating the show towards child labor. But ladies and gentlemen, what happens is that, you know, in these days, quite a lot of people might not even have the exposure or, you know, the knowledge or the information to an extent where they do not know how to fight for their rights. Majority of the times, it's not just about child labor, it's about your fundamental rights, it's about your freedom of speech, it's about all of those rights which the Constitution instates that, okay, you know, this is your first and, you know, it's your priority, you have to prioritize things as well. But just because of the fact that there's instability or the region we live in is not very stable, what happens is that the microeconomic figures or the indicators, they're not very positive because of the fact that we do not pay attention towards what is very necessary. Now, for all those parents who are out there, I think what I'm going to pledge for today is that if you know, one of your kid or two of your kids are going out there to work as a mechanic or probably as a chai wala bacha or whatsoever the case might probably be, please make sure that you at least ask them that if you wish to go to school, we can probably find another solution. Even if they have to work in the morning, what they can do is probably find someone to teach them in the evening as well, or you yourself can take that initiative. Or for all those people who are out there who have got plenty time, please make sure that you teach a child.
Exactly. So that is our public service message, which is nicely linked in what we will be talking about in our later half. But for the first half, we have been joined by Dr. Yusuf Raza, who is our religious teacher today, and we will be talking about Surah an-Nahal.
Right. So, Assalamu alaikum everyone,
Walaikum assalam.
and we're talking about Surah an-Nahl. Just to give a little bit of a background of the surah itself, this is towards the later Meccan period. So the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is almost getting ready to migrate, right? A lot of the Sahaba get permission to migrate in this surah itself. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself will wait for explicit ayats addressing him, allowing for him to migrate from Mecca to Medina. So most of the theme of the surah talks about how obviously this is a huge sacrifice for them, leaving their households there where they've stayed their entire lives. And we are not as used to this process of, we don't understand how great this situation was or how immense this sacrifice was for the people of Mecca, for the simple reason that we're very used to people moving from city to city, from country to country, from village to city. Yeah, we're very used to this kind of stuff. But in 14 centuries ago, Mecca, you born and die for generations in one place. So for them to be leaving what they've worked their entire lives to gather, the social security that they have there, the contacts that they have, the resources that they've developed, it was a big deal. So surah after surah comes down telling them, you know what, you don't trust the things that are around you, they're a means, but the ultimate source is Allah, and if you take this step for Him, then He will be providing for you, right? And the second thing that is interesting to note within this theme of migration, that when they get to Medina, there will be a community in Medina, a Jewish community that is already settled there. That is already settled there. So, in a sense, principles of engagement with them are also being given as to how, when you engage with an other. Now, in this case, it is a Muslim community going from Mecca, and there will be a Muslim community receiving them in Medina, but there's also a Jewish community living within that vicinity as to how to engage with them, what should your principles be. But then the rules or the principles that we get from here can apply to whenever a person from one discipline is interacting with a person from another speciality, or a person from one country or one race, or whatever the case may be, how you interact with the other so that the interaction is fruitful, it is mutually beneficial. It is mutually beneficial. And so the great examples that this surah gives are from the natural world around us. Are from the natural world around us. And we'll start with the ayah itself. This is ayah number 68. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَوْحَى رَبُّكَ إِلَى النَّحْلِ أَنِ اتَّخِذِي مِنَ الْجِبَالِ بُيُوتًا. That your Rabb, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is being addressed in the singular, that your Rabb, Ya Rasulullah, revealed, gives wahi, inspires to the honeybee, and telling the honeybee, أَنِ اتَّخِذِي مِنَ الْجِبَالِ بُيُوتًا وَمِنَ الشَّجَرِ وَمِمَّا يَعْرِشُونَ. That make hives, beehives in the mountains and in the trees, and in what the human beings batch for them, like the houses or the honey farms that human beings develop for them. So the bees are being instructed, divine instructions to do this. And this in itself is a very important point to note, because traditionally an understanding has always been that these are insignificant creatures. That these are, you know, like they don't deserve much of our attention. And if human beings were to associate themselves with animals, then it will be the bravery of a lion.
And why do you think it was the way it is?
Traditionally, because of course there's certain values that human societies has put up for itself. Bravery is a huge, chivalry is a huge value, strength, power, authority.
So higher self-esteem.
All of those that are to do with higher self-esteem and higher status in society, those animals are looked up at more as greater animals. And these smaller insects are, well, smaller insects, right? So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is breaking that concept, because at the end of the day, you look towards animals in this way, you'll start looking towards your society with that same stratification, where people devoid of strength, deprived of authority and power and wealth, will also be looked down upon naturally. So to be able to look at the natural world and give something as minuscule, apparently, as a bee respect. And the way Allah gives it respect is that it receives wahi. It receives, again, the word used is the same as which prophets receive. right? Obviously, it's in a different category, but the word used is the same. So the honor being given to a humble creature. And then what is that humble creature doing? What is the details of that wahi? The next ayah number 69, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that these are the houses that you take, but ثُمَّ كُلِي مِن كُلِّ الثَّمَرَاتِ فَاسْلُكِي سُبُلَ رَبِّكِ ذُلُلًا, that then eat of all the fruits and walk in the ways, the paths that have been delineated for the bees, and bees can know their paths really well.
Yeah.
Like they go kilometers upon kilometers and they know where to go.
And they work as a team as well.
They work as a team. They work so beautifully as a team that, and this is like National Geographic kind of stuff, that if one bee sits on one flower, the other bee honors that and wouldn't sit in that flower.
Exactly.
It'll find its own flower.
And then they have a queen to follow as well, and then they have a queen to protect.
Okay, so let's find out.
So they have this organized structure, and so the bee follows that path. It takes from the fruit, from every flower that is available. Before I go on with the ayah, there's a hadith of the Messenger ﷺ in which he says that the parable, I swear by the one in whose hands the life of Muhammad is, meaning I swear by God. The Messenger ﷺ is saying that the parable of a believer, or the example of a believer, is like that of a honeybee. That it sits on that which is pure, and it produces that which is pure. And when it sits, it does not break, and it does not cause any corruption. And so, in a sense, taking lessons from the honeybee, when you're interacting with another, don't seek to dominate. Don't seek to put down. Don't seek to prove yourselves to be superior and absolutely relegate the other to an inferior category. You can't have conversations like that. Conversations always take place when you give the other a dignified position, an honorable position, that they have something to give you as well.
I think it's a great message for all those people who always come up with a line saying that, we just want to be around nature. So, being around nature, you obviously need to observe as well. And I think these are the things which we need to observe in nature, that the smallest and the smallest of the creatures are probably, to any other extent, I think what we need to do is, if we try to focus and observe, we'll find quite amazing solutions to our problems as well.
We'll have so many different lessons to learn.
Yeah.
Again, the way of the Quran is that it completely changes the way we observe nature. Is that the way we derive lessons from nature, it becomes so much more holistic. It's like we spoke about before as well, this is a mystic experience. What Allama Iqbal calls, these are mystic observers of natural phenomena in acts of worship.
And there's a reason behind everyone's existence.
And we see that as well, that there is something which we would consider very small, and how much of a great contribution it's making.
Exactly, because the bees are actually dying out, and there's a problem, and it's actually affecting the ecological ecosystem. So it has an impact on everyone. So let's continue. Let's find out.
So يخرج من بطونها شراب مختلف ألوانه. You extract from the bellies of the bees, or there comes from the bellies of the bees, a beverage, a drink, which is of different colors. So the honey that we extract from the bees, and the diversity within the honey itself, the kind of bees that it comes from, the kind of fruits or the kinds of flowers that that honey is coming from, and then what we see is the bee is interacting with a flower. So let's say bee is the self and the flower is the other. And the way the bee respects the flower, and the way the bee takes from the flower, and the way what it gives out. You have the wahi, in a sense, that the bee had, the inspiration, the divine inspiration that the bee had, and then the material that it took from the flower, and how the whatever goes on within the bee itself, the process, the end product is not just a sum of what the bee has and what the flower has. It is something new altogether. It is something so beautiful that it has medicinal properties. It has medicinal properties It is palatable for the people. It is refreshing for the people. It is nutritious for the people. It is a healing
It has
for
got
the people.
shifa for almost
Yeah, and
every
that's
disease
fihi
out there.
shifa'un linnas. It has shifa, it has cure for people. Inna fi dhalika la ayatal liqawmi yatafakkarun. And definitely in that is a sign for a people who reflect, for a people who think about this. In this just a small example from the life of a bee, there is so much that you can learn, that there is things that other communities have to offer you. And there is that which you have to offer them. And your conversation will bring about products that are so much more fruitful if you give them that respect and dignity. And you understand that they have a contribution to make to your understanding of the world as well. And the fruits that we will then come up with are going to be socially, they'll have medicinal properties, healing for social problems.
Exactly, and I think that can be done in every walk of life as well. For example, whenever people sit down, or even if it's a roundtable conference,
Yeah.
people do end up arguing. Now, arguments obviously are very different from being very logical in an argument as well, because of the fact that, you know, when you're arguing for no reason and you just want the other person to shut up because you know better or you know more than him, I think that's what we were trying to explain over here as well.
Yeah, and also I think another thing is that from this we can also drive, because I think we're applying this to our society and the world that we're living in. These days people don't, like you said, there's no conversation when one feels superior.
Yeah.
But we don't have conversations. We don't listen to hear what someone's saying. Like the conversation, someone starts talking, you listen to 2 words, we're already thinking of our response. That's why we interrupt them. That's why actually I've had so many conversations the last few weeks where I'm talking about one thing, but everyone's talking about something. And you feel like you're taking crazy pills. But how do we, like this, you know, surah came down, people, you know, we can go and tell this to everyone, but it's much harder to put it into practice. How do we actually start respecting such small things when we
What's the
don't really even
implication?
have value for lives these days?
Right. So a couple of surahs down, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us another example. Musa alayhi salam is a prophet, right? And in his time, he is the greatest prophet. And so he's asked by his people, who is the most knowledgeable? And he says, putting 2 and 2 together, I'm a prophet, everyone's supposed to be following me, I get wahi, it's me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no.
Oh, okay.
And he sends him on a journey. There's this other guy, a good person, a good slave of ours, you need to meet him. And that's the story of Khidr. And the way Musa alayhi salam interacts with him, even though he's a prophet, understanding first of all the realization that whatever your area of expertise is, you don't know all of reality.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There is so much more to the creation of God than you have been given the knowledge of. And there is so much more in the experience of one other individual. Even if that individual is 10, 11 years old, even if that individual is a kid, a child, he deserves to be heard. He deserves to be heard. And it is only when you give them that dignity and that credibility that they have something worth sharing, is when you too will be heard.
I think I've got a fabulous example for that. I mean, just imagine talking to your gardener. I think what happens is that, you know, one season he comes down and he tells you that these are the flowers of the plants which we can probably put in or we can think about, and then you realize that, okay, you know, these were the ones which I thought of, irrespective of the fact that you never knew that whether they can be grown in this season or not. So, you know, you can probably yell on the gardener as well because you pay less attention towards people like these who work at your places as well. Now, since they being the experts, and I've gone through this as well because I've done it once and I wanted him to, you know, plant the other flowers. And he kept on saying, sir, you know, they won't grow and they won't grow and they won't grow. And I, not knowing that what he's trying to explain, kind of forced it onto him. So yeah, that season I couldn't really see
Assumption that you
any
were
flowers.
cleverer than him
Yeah.
and that he didn't know what he was talking
And
about.
it is an era of specialization anyways.
That's very important. And there's a hadith of the Messenger ﷺ that says, "Iti kulla dhi haqqin haqqah." Give everyone who has a particular right his right. So there's a phenomenon in social psychology called Dunning-Kruger effect, that basically it is you not knowing to you don't know enough to know that you don't know.
Okay,
Basically,
yeah.
you consider yourself to be a specialist in a field that you don't even have the basic understanding of. So a specialist is actually talking, and he spent his entire life struggling with those questions and dealing with those issues, and you have like a 5-minute solution to his problem without even having heard it. So giving that dignity to the person for his experience and speciality.
Exactly.
Isn't it? I think it was Plato, or I don't know, Socrates, or someone who's like, a wise man is a man who knows that
That's
he knows
Socrates.
nothing. Socrates,
Yeah.
that's the one. I didn't know which one it was. Okay, so guys, we're going to go for a short break, and when you come back, it fits in perfectly about giving every individual their right, because it is Child Labor Day, and we are observing it.
All right, and then at the same time, you know, I think I'm going to make it very relevant as well for Dr. Yusuf Raza over here. So Dr. Yusuf Raza, by profession, he's a psychiatrist, you know.
Yes, we know.
And what we're going to do is that we're going to make him sit over here because we know that he knows about what we're going to discuss. So that's why we made sure that he sits down over here as well.
Okay, so that is one angle of it as well. So let's go take a break, and when you come back, we will be discussing Child Labor Day.
Good
Stay
morning.
tuned.